So how does a government go from being loved, like really loved, to becoming a total laughingstock online, basically overnight? We're going to dive into a wild case study from Sri Lanka that shows just how quickly public trust can totally evaporate when one single threat sets off a social media firestorm. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so picture this. Just a few days ago, after the president gave his speech about a national disaster, the public response was, well, it was overwhelmingly positive. People were calling him brother, a leader. You could feel this really deep, almost personal sense of trust. But then, literally days later, after just one announcement, all that support completely collapses. It turns into hostile mockery. I mean, we're talking insults like donkey and a sound. We'll get to that sound in a minute. So the big question is, what on earth could cause such a lightning-fast collapse?
Well, it all boils down to one single threat. And it was made at the absolute worst possible time. And this was the statement that lit the fuse. The government announced that police would start arresting anyone posting, quote, defamatory statements about the president on social media. Now, that's a pretty bold move on its own, right? But it was the context surrounding this threat that really made the whole thing just explode. See, this threat was seen as a massive overreach. And it's all about how they did it. The government used emergency laws that were supposed to be for the severe flooding happening at the time. This directly went against the president's own promise that these laws would only be for disaster relief. So to the public, it looks like the government cared more about its own ego than about its citizens who were, literally underwater. So how did people respond to this threat of being arrested? Did they get scared? Did they go silent? Nope, not even close. They responded with a massive, collective digital jeer. Suddenly, social media was just flooded, a total tidal wave of comments, all saying the same thing. Who? I mean, sometimes with one O, sometimes with a bunch of them. Now, if you're not from Sri Lanka, this might just look like nonsense. But in the culture there, this one little sound, it carries some serious weight. Yeah, who is basically the ultimate way to show public contempt. Think of it like a collective boo, but way more powerful. It's meant to ridicule and humiliate, so by flooding every comment section with this one sound, the public wasn't just disagreeing, they were essentially laughing the government's threat right off the digital stage. So instead of scaring people into shutting up, the threat did the exact opposite. It's a textbook case of what's called the Streisand effect. When you try to censor something, you only end up making it spread even further and faster. The government's threat basically became a rallying cry for more mockery. And you can see it in the numbers. One popular news meme asked people to react. Hit the heart emoji if you agree with the threat, or the laughing emoji if you think it's just ridiculous. And the results, wow, they were just staggering. Almost 7,000 laughing emojis compared to less than 700 hearts. I mean, the public's verdict could not have been clearer. And the sheer scale of this was immense. Get this. A single post from just one news site got over 10,000 comments. This wasn't some fringe group of activists. This was a massive mainstream digital uprising. Okay, so we've seen what happened, but now let's dig into the why. Why did this threat backfire so spectacularly? It really comes down to three key reasons. First and foremost, people were screaming hypocrisy. They felt like the government was guilty of the exact same thing it was now trying to make illegal. Commenters kept using this really powerful Sinhalese idiom that translates to kicking the ladder one climbed up on. The feeling was that this political party had used aggressive social media campaigns and ridicule to get into power, and now that they were on top, they wanted to kick that ladder away so no one else could use it. People even framed it in cultural and religious terms, bringing up this Buddhist concept of basically instant karma. They saw the government as getting immediate payback, reaping all the negativity they had sown when they were the ones in opposition. All right, the second big reason was just the awful timing. The government seemed completely, and I mean completely, out of touch with what people were actually going through. This one comment just captures the public's disgust perfectly. It says, the country is underwater and these guys have Facebook problems. It just perfectly framed the government as being totally narcissistic, caring more about some online insults than about saving people's lives and homes during a massive natural disaster. And the third reason? Just sheer uncut defiance. The public simply refused to be intimidated. And they drew on this deep well of political and historical memory to push back hard.
The backlash was so creative and so cutting, people dug up the deputy minister's own past, pointing out when he'd called someone a donkey. They sarcastically dared the police to go ahead and build bigger prisons for all 22 million citizens. They mocked the leaders as crybabies. And some even raised serious fears of a return to much darker, more violent times in the country's history. This wasn't just anger, it was a total, defiant rejection of their authority.
So after all that, what's the big lesson here? What's the takeaway from this whole firestorm? Well, it's a really powerful lesson about just how fragile public trust is in our digital age. You know, we're really seeing a new kind of cycle for political legitimacy. A government can win an election, sure, but that public trust, it's only granted provisionally. The second there's a perceived betrayal, especially something as toxic as hypocrisy, that trust can be yanked away in an instant, and it gets replaced immediately by a powerful, networked opposition that organizes online. Ultimately, the message from the public was crystal clear. You don't get respect by enforcing it with emergency laws. You earn it through competence, especially when people are in a crisis. In the end, legitimacy comes from your actions, not from coercion.
And all of this really leaves us with one final big question to chew on. In our hyper-connected world, has it really come to this? Is public trust now something that's earned one tweet at a time, but can be lost completely with a single threat?